Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of my favorite chess tactics exercises of all time, where I'll be showing you 10 more positions to think about. Stop the video when I say so and take as much time as you need to find the best move and calculate all variations to all reasonable responses by your opponent, as well as a basic plan to win the position after the forcing sequence. If the best move actually wins, it might only draw. If you aren't sure that you can win any of those positions, try playing them against an engine. While calculating, you might also want to write down variations. When you're finished, resume your video and I'll show the main lines. I'm happy about any questions or comments. In case you want to play out the positions or think you found an error in my analysis, I'll be including the FENs for all positions in the description below. So let's get started. This is position number 1, white to play. Please stop the video now. I will reveal the solution now. White wins here. This is a mate in 8 and it starts with queen e5. And to delay mate as long as possible, black will throw in this check, which you shouldn't take, but instead block, and black will sack the bishop. And now the main tactic starts. Black plays queen f6, which is the obvious way to prevent the mating plan by white. Unfortunately it fails, and that is by checking here. Black has to block, and black is mated in this fashion. In this position it is black to play. Please stop the video now. I will reveal the solution. This is a very practical problem because it's about defense. Normally when you do tactics training you only get mating attacks and things of the sort. And note that anything to do with taking the rook or any nonsense with trying to queen this pawn doesn't work at all. Your king just get murdered here. If you missed that, you might want to go back and check again. And there are 3 moves which give black a big advantage here. All other moves aren't that great. They're at best equal, which in all cases means that your king is going in for some really big trouble, where you have to play very precisely to even hold a draw. The first move is the brave engine line, which is king g8. If you thought about that, that's a good move. I won't cover that, however, because I don't find it extremely intuitive. The most intuitive solution to this is you want to play bishop g5. However, you can't play bishop g5. Bishop g5 would accomplish all things you want. It would cover the h4 square, preventing that check. It would take this knight out more or less because it would be cut out of its squares, and if it takes, the queen gets in a good position to defend. And otherwise white is screwed here, so if white doesn't get an attack soon, you won't have anything. Basically, bishop g5 is really good, except it runs into h4, and this position is bad for black. It's equal at best, and your king is going to suffer here. You retreat the bishop, and now h5, and here you can play many things. However, this is really not nice, and if you calculated this, I hope you aborted this solution, because it's very unpleasant. So there is a simple thing that fixes this problem of h4, which is just this check here. It's forcing king g8, king g1, and now the pawn is blocked. That's the basic idea that I expected you to find here, which is elegant and simple. And after, say, something cheesy like bishop c7 or something, you just play king e7 here, and white has nothing. This is the basic idea. In the initial position, I also want to show you what happens if you play f6, which you might have calculated, and which also gives black a big advantage. If you didn't find this bishop check and saw that h4 after bishop g5 is unpleasant, in which case congratulations to you for the correct calculation. And in this position, white has 2 possible ways to continue the attack that I can think of immediately, which are knight h4 attacking g6, and the queen check. Let's look at the queen check first. And here you have to play king g8. If you play king g7, then you get chased around. And here, say, you basically, your king is out in the open. And this should be an advantage for black, but it's really not something you want to play. If you calculated this, I'm sure you had a huge trouble thinking of a winning plan here, because there's just too much tactics in the position you would have to take into account. So let's see what happens after the much better move after the queen check, king g8. And here it's difficult to suggest moves for white. For example, if white plays g takes, we just play bishop takes, and again there's nothing white can do. For example, the exchange obviously does nothing. So let's say white doesn't take here, and instead try something else. It's really difficult to suggest anything. If bishop takes, again, we just take it and take the pawn. This is the same position as earlier. It's really difficult to suggest anything for white, which might have been your final assessment for this position. It is quite correct. If white plays something like calm move, bishop c3, you can just take the rook in. White doesn't actually have an attack here, even if it may look a bit scary. And the other possibility, which is one we haven't looked at yet, after f6, white can also play knight h4. In which case, basically anything works here to defend, which is rook g8 is good, just defending the pawn. Queen e8 is good, just defending the pawn. Even moves like f5, that's fine as well. Just you have to be a bit careful. Might play something like king g2 queen g2 for example. He might still want to continue the attack. That's the only chance he has to do anything basically here. And in this position you have many choices, but if say you decided to take the rook, well, that's not really good, because white has queen g3, queen h3, and here actually white will have counterplay against your king, and that's not something you want. So you should keep on the defensive, and this rook isn't going anywhere. Alright, I think that covers this position. This is more now than I was ever hoping to do in any of these tactics, but I think that practical problems, which usually have a lot of analysis which is necessary to understand them in full, they're really necessary to mix up this kind of training. So let's get to the next position. This is white to play. Please stop the video now. I will reveal the solution now. So this has only one move which doesn't get mated, and that is the rook check. You have to play that. If you thought of anything else, you just get mated here. And this forces rook f6, that's the only move. In this position you should play g5. You may play exchanging here, that's a possibility, and try getting these pawns to queen. However, that's not as clear, and I don't want to waste too much time covering that. g5 is crushing, and here black probably plays taking here, and something like knight d1. And here these two moves are the only two moves that win. And let's look at the more crushing rook c7. And here, with something like bishop d6, we just play h7 for example, and there's nothing black can do. So if you calculated king b2, well, in this case there's many things you could suggest for black. However, they both fail at stopping these two pawns. And the main idea is that your king is not getting mated here, which is the main problem to calculate in this one. So if you want more analysis, for example, on the solution taking here, analysis for yourself. This position you are playing black, and white just plays bishop g5. Please stop the video now and think of a response. So obviously black gains a big advantage by playing bishop takes f3, which basically wins a piece, because white obviously cannot make up for that by just taking our queen, because we take his queen, and that's a position where he's just knight down. Also, on white taking this bishop, we can just take his bishop, and this queen check does nothing. We just play king d8, and we're fine. As well, bishop check, as well, king d8. So only thing to calculate here is this bishop takes f7, and we take that and play knight f6, which is fine. So much for that one. This position you are playing black, and white has just played b6, threatening to advance these pawns. Please stop the video now and think about what you want to play here. So I will reveal the solution. First of all, you should have noticed, I hope you did, that this is a variation of problem number 3. Problem number 3 was, after black plays bishop a3 here, he gets crushed by white. After white plays rook h6 check, which forces rook f6, and g5 just kills black. That's what you had to find in position number 3. So I hope at least you didn't consider bishop a3, which looks quite threatening to white's king, but just ends up dying for this crushing. Rook h6, which is the only move that saves white in that variation. However, if you considered this move, you at least had the right idea about the course of action that's required here. Trying to stop these pawns doesn't give black an advantage. White should try and go for black should try and go for white's king, and that is achieved with the excellent move knight ec2. Note that there are moves like knight f3 that are also trying to go for white's king. With knights, sometimes you have to move back to move forward, but that's not really intuitive in my opinion. I'm not going to be covering that. It's also a much worse move, and it's quite difficult. You might want to check it out yourself. But knight c2, knight ec2 is a really good move. And the point of this move is that it's going for the king. For example, if white plays b7 here, just looking to advance the pawn, white gets mated. And the mate goes as follows: knight a3 check, king can go to a1 of course, because knight b6, knight b3, sorry, and knight b3 anyway. Only move is here. And now knight c2, crushing move. White can do nothing against rook d2 mate. Hope you found this. This is one of the trickier problems I've had yet so far. And well, white can check here, we just take. White can check here, we just move the king. White can queen, we mate. So there's nothing. And that means that after knight ec2, white is actually forced to react to this. Now, the only way that makes any sense whatsoever to react to this is to play rook c7. And rook c7 obviously prevents this mating attack. Since this is actually a pretty difficult position, a very tactical endgame, I would like to show you only a few selected variations in this. If you are interested, I strongly recommend playing this against an engine. It would really benefit seeing tactics in the endgame. And if you saw any of these tactical ideas, I strongly congratulate you on your analysis and the calculation before playing knight c2. So, since black needs to continue this attack or try to stop the advancement of these pawns, there are two moves here that look logical. The one is, which if you calculated the mating attack, you may find the easier one to find. It's actually the worst move, but it works here. Knight a3 check, driving the king, which is followed by knight b3 check, and now we cannot play this crushing knight move because it would be taken, of course, but we can check with the rook and play rook b2, which is the idea here. And the idea behind rook b2 is that, of course, it's still keeping threats on the king. And the basic idea here as well is that if white decides to play b7, black has knight a5, which wins the pawn. And the endgame after that would still be quite interesting and worth looking at. However, I don't want to spend so much time looking at that. The rook d2 line is actually more simple. After rook c7, white plays rook d2, which is threatening mate. For example, after b7, just play knight a3 check, and white only has king a1 or king c1, and knight b3 is mate there. So instead, white should play something like rook c3, for example, trying to prevent knight b3 check. And here we play knight a3 check anyway. Note that after takes, we just play bishop takes. And here, for example, after this rook check, we just move the king. And these checks basically run out. So in order to not get destroyed here, white can play something like rook c7. However, obviously this is just crushing. If king a1, knight b3 mate, so king is forced here and discovery picks up the rook. And this is obviously absolutely devastating, and anything else here for white really gets mated just more quickly. So that means that here white has to play either king a1 or king c1, and on king a1 we actually have many options, and something like king d7 might be considered here, just trying to get in the way of this. For example, if here b7, in that case we just play bishop b4, threatening mate, and if white moves the rook, for example to here, we still have knight b3 mate. So basically this rook is stranded here. For example, what white has to play here is rook hc1, and here we take and play check here. On king b2 we can pick up the pawn, and here black has an advantage, obviously. Alright, so let's go back to the initial position. I think I've dragged this out a bit too long. If you want to look at certain special variations, I suggest you either post questions on that or analyze it for yourself. Only thing I want to show now is after our move and rook c7, if we play rook d2, which is the better move, what if white plays king c1. Well, in this case we obviously have to play knight b3 check. And what if here king b2? Of course king b1 is possible, you would have to look into that as well. But in this position we play the discovery. This is a position you might consider another puzzle. If you want to, you can stop the video and think about this for a moment. The solution here is, amazingly enough, and that is the only move that's really giving black an advantage, h5. And this move is actually quite strong. The idea behind this move is something you should have kept in mind going back to problem number 3 even, that you would like to play bishop a3. It looks really dangerous for the white king. However, you can only do that if this rook check is impossible. And that is what this move achieves. Because obviously rook takes is bad because we can check then, and pawn takes blocks the file anyway. So this pawn move is actually really good. And let's just look at rook takes h5 here. That's still trying to do something at least. After this check and king b2, which is the only move that doesn't get mated immediately, we have rook a1. And in this position we're threatening mate. This bishop is covering the h6 here still. This knight is covering the c6 square, and white is just lost. And let's say white just takes this pawn like that. Well, in this case we just play bishop a3, and this is forced mate. White can do nothing here. I hope you find this enjoyable. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.